Christina Suarez has insured her home for 80% of its replacement value of $155,000. Use the chart to determine the amount of coverage for her personal property to the nearest dollar. Okay, as always, my first question is, what variable are we solving for? In this case, we're determining the amount of coverage for her personal property. So if we want to find the amount of coverage, that is going to be equal to the amount of coverage on the home multiplied by whatever percent is covered. And I'll explain more about what that means in a moment. So the amount of coverage on the home multiplied by whatever percent is covered. Now, to get there, we need to know, first of all, what's the amount of coverage on the home? That is determined by taking the replacement value and multiplying it by the insured percent. This insured percentage and this percentage covered are two different numbers. So if I want to know the amount of coverage on the home, it says right here in the text that her home is insured for 80% of its replacement value of $155,000. So we're going to take $155,000 and we're going to multiply it by 0.80, and that's going to tell us what 80% of $155,000 is. So the amount of coverage on her home comes to $124,000. So her home has a replacement value of $155,000, and she has insured it for 80%, which is $124,000. Okay, so this is a number that I can plug into this equation, and now I just need to determine percent covered. That's when I turn to my insurance coverage chart. In this case, they specified that we want to know personal property. So if I look at personal property, I see that the percent of coverage is 45% for personal property. So if I want to find out my amount of coverage for personal property, I take the amount of coverage on the home, which is $124,000, and I multiply it by that percent coverage of 45%, or 0.50. That tells me that my amount of coverage is equal to $55,800. Okay, so the tricky thing here is just separating out your percentages. They're grouped pretty nicely, so even without knowing the equations, it's kind of intuitive to say that if she has insured her home for 80% of its replacement value, then the amount of coverage is going to be that 80%. So we first found 80% of the replacement value, which came out to $124,000. Of that $124,000, 45% of it is allotted to personal property, so we found 45% of that, and we found that our amount coverage was $55,800.